Jujutsu Kaisen fans, this is Chris Bolts, and I am doing a review of this week's episode of Jujutsu Kaisen, episode 55, The Tokyo Colony, Part 2. Now, before I do get into the content, do make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn on your post notifications. All that stuff really does help me out. The way I can really go ahead and describe this episode is that it's a two-parter. The first part really is talking about this character that both Megumi and Itadori were looking for in the last episode, Higuruma, because he happens to be one of the sorcerers within the cloning game that right now has 100 points, and he's just sitting on them. So remember that in the prior episode, they are theorizing a plan that if they can get to someone who already has 100 points until they'll be able to go ahead and add that rule to the game, because that's what you can do now. If you got 100 points, you can add a rule. And so this character Higuruma, who's the one sitting in the bathtub, sitting there waiting, just doing nothing for the most part. The reason why is this entire first portion of this episode is Higuruma is trying to help this guy right here. His name is Keiji Oe. He's been convicted of murder, and he saw that quote at the beginning. 99.9% of cases in Japan end in a guilty verdict, which is kind of fascinating. But when you think about all the rights that you really don't have over in the country that you have over here in the United States, it begins to make sense and everything. So the bottom line is, it took a very long time for Higuruma and his partner right there to get this guy the verdict overturned. They went through appeals. Second appeal, they lost. And then on third appeal, it was a fait accompli. And the importance of all of this really is not so much the case itself, even though it was important to Higuruma and his development. The outcome is what's the most important, because the outcome of this case is what caused Higuruma for his powers to awaken. And that's what you're going to see right here. The powers of his are going to awaken. You're going to see this big giant black Shikigami just come up from behind him and just sit there behind him, and he's just going to be banging this gavel crazily. So right here, this is basically his power. It reminds me of the way that it points out right there. If you guys know Phoenix Ace Attorney, when he points at you, and because he's about to come on something that's very pertinent that he's come up with to help understands that everything in the case has come together. He points his finger out like that with the gavel. It reminds me of that. At first, when I was watching this, I was like, I hope the entire episode isn't like that, but at the same time, I appreciate what it's doing. It feels like an old Perry Mason episode. If you guys are familiar with Perry Mason from the 50s and even from probably the 80s and some of the movies that he was in, where Perry Mason is a defense attorney and he does everything in his power to try to get his client off because he feels like they've been wronged. That's basically Higuruma right here. Higuruma is he's an idealistic attorney, always wants to stand up for the rights of the accused and want to help them out in any way he can. And the reason why his powers have awakened is because he felt the whole system was against his client, and it's rigged, it's corrupt, and his powers have awakened, and that's why he's standing right there with that Shikigami back behind him and the cursed sorcerer. We come back to the present, where this is a flashback for Arenamai. This guy right here, by the way, is Reggie. I thought this was Higuruma, but that is not Higuruma or anything like that. It's another character named Reggie. He's working hand in hand with the girl Remy. And if you remember when the other episode ended, it ended on this cliffhanger where Arenamai was taking Itadori to Higuruma, but this girl over here, Remy, was also saying she was going to take Megumi to Higuruma, but it turns out that this girl is lying because she's working in cahoots with this Reggie guy right here. And this flashback right here, this is Arenamai. He's Itadori. This is where he actually remembers meeting Itadori, and he feels kind of bad that he's going to be tricking Itadori. Well, he's not necessarily tricking Itadori. He doesn't really want to have Itadori go meet Higuruma, because Higuruma actually is a very powerful sorcerer. He's a newly awakened sorcerer. His powers awakened before they went into the coding game right there, and pretty much all this is real sinister. Both these men, Higuruma and Reggie, are absolutely smart. They're geniuses. We know obviously Higuruma is, because he's an attorney, can think very sharp, very analytical mind, and they're asking so many different questions and all that. And Itadori does meet up with Higuruma. Higuruma, at the end of the day, does not want the Colon game to end, and at the same time, Reggie also comes in and says that the way this game is all set up, none of it makes sense. He gives 3 reasons why to Megumi, and Megumi is forced to agree with them. The number of players, the gap in strength between the players, and the barriers rules all are set up to make it seem as though that there are only going to be strong sorcerers that are remaining after everything is all said and done. So it's going to be living up to the name of the calling game. It's going to be calling the weak from the strong. Reggie comes in and says, you know, once that happens, once there's only strong sorcerers remaining, Kenjaku is really going to be dropping a very big bomb on the game itself. And here we have Itadori standing here getting ready to confront Higuruma, because Higuruma does not want the game to end. He actually wants to see 2 things happen at least once. He wants to see how the outcomes of rules 2 and 8, and the outcomes of rules 2 and 8 is thus: rule 2 says that players who violate the first rule of the calling game will be stripped of their technique, or as rule 8 also says that if within 19 days a person has not changed their score right after they've either joined the calling game or after getting a new score or getting any kind of points, they will also be stripped of their technique. So he wants to see how that all works out. That's where we get this nice setup right here, where Higuruma calls out his domain, which is called deadly sentencing. So this is going to be a very interesting right here. And once again, it reminds me of Ace Attorney from the Court of Law and everything like that, for that Capcom game, if you guys are familiar with that. And then it ends right here with Kenjaku walking among these individuals as Reggie is narrating in the background. Remember I said earlier that he's going to be dropping some type of bomb once there's only the strong remaining. So this overall was a really good episode. It was kind of confusing in the beginning, but once everything was all said and done, once it got to the midway point of this episode, everything started to gel and make sense as to why they needed to introduce Higuruma. There was a complaint about the episode with Maki-chan and how she went in and killed the entire Zane clan, about how there was no kind of character buildup. And my mention right there was that the reason why there was no character buildup was because everyone's about to be wiped out. Why do you care about people who are about to get killed off? However, it's very important that this episode actually introduces Higuruma, because he's going to become a key player inside the calling game. So if he's going to be a key player within the calling game, it's very important to go ahead and give him that type of introduction to let you know what kind of character he is and why he matters. So it's I agree with what the MAPPA has done here in introducing Higuruma the way they did. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and give this episode an 8 out of 10. Not as exciting as the last episode, but still a good episode nevertheless, and some really good drawings, some really good animation, some really good intrigue. So yes, I really did like this episode. What did you guys think about this episode? Whatever you thought, jump down in the comments and let me know what you think. And make sure you like, share, subscribe, turn on those post notifications. All that stuff really does help me out. And remember, this is Chris Bolt signing off, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy.